beatdown happened. Two, my son-in-law is the boys basketball coach at Clarksville, and he's tickled to death Chad retired. I had three and I forgot what it was. But anyway, we'll get there. Indiana Department of Agriculture. First came to fruition when Governor Daniels was originally elected. All the entities within the Indiana Department of Agriculture, it just hit me what the third one was. You don't mind? If I start throwing out acronyms and still these big long names that the government puts on programs and things, just let me know, ask me, I'll explain the acronym, or I'll try not to use them. But if I use acronyms, we'll be out here about a half hour sooner probably. But anyway, once Governor Daniels was elected, the entities were all in place in different parts, different buildings in Indianapolis. In order to streamline state government, he decided to bring them all together under one roof, and did, and thus the Indiana State Department of Agriculture was born. All along, the Lieutenant Governor upon election in the state of Indiana serves as the Secretary of Agriculture, as compared to Kentucky, where that's a separate, the Secretary of Agriculture is elected separately from the other departments. With that, we were born when Becky Skillman, former Lieutenant Governor, was the Secretary of Agriculture, and presently, Ms. Ellsperman, I can't pronounce that name, Ellsperman? The current Lieutenant Governor, Secretary of Agriculture, are both huge promoters, advocates of agriculture in Indiana, and with them, we now have a slogan with the new administration, Governor Pence, that we are going from good to great. So this thing may go from great to good when I get finished with it, but I'll do my best. Indiana Agriculture is headed by a one-person director, which the director of the department is Gina Sheets. Gina Sheets is the former director of economic development. With the administration being gung-ho on economic development, she was a logical choice. She is a very good logical choice. I'm tickled to death to work for her. Even though today we had a vacancy, which was the director of the Division of Soil Conservation, which I actually worked for. That position was vacant, but it was filled yesterday. And I can't tell you who it is yet, even though you wouldn't know him from Adam anyway. But it will come out. So I do have somebody in between me and the director, the lieutenant governor, which feels pretty good because I felt like every move I made, I was kind of putting myself at risk. So with that, got a dry mouth already. That goes with the territory with me. I'll just give you a brief overview of all the divisions within the State Department of Agriculture because I don't know a whole lot about the other divisions. I know more about what I do, and I'm sure if they were here, they would do the same thing. But bioenergy. Bioenergy is this, that. Bioenergy is all about ethanol and biodiesel. Carrie Aubrey, the person that made last contact with Chris, is the director of bioenergy for the Department of Agriculture. And his basic responsibility is promotion and marketing of ethanol and biodiesel produced in the state of Indiana, and even go as far as maybe to the export markets. If you know of an E85 pump in Jeffersonville, when I think there's one at Meyer, maybe even some of the local entities may even have one. Carrie Aubrey played a role in getting that E85 pump at that location. International trade. International trade is exactly that. International trade promotes our agricultural products produced here in Indiana worldwide. We have had several foreign groups in to take a look at Indian agriculture and our products. That has ended up with a lot of contracts being signed for exports of Indiana ag goods, grain, woodlands, or actually hardwoods. Hardwoods in exports in Indiana is a huge product for the state of Indiana as far as agriculture goes. Diversified agriculture, that's a group That is basically a one-lady show that works with the, we'll call them the non-grain farmers, your niche markets, your vegetable producers, fruit producers. Right now, she's working with a producer in Sullivan County that had all the problem with the bad, we'll call them tainted cantaloupe last spring and last summer. He fell out of graces with his neighbors because when his crop went bad and the problems he had, he basically took that industry with him. So right now, the director of the Diversified Agriculture is over there trying to get fences mended and get some training done for these folks that we don't have that problem with the melons in here. And apparently that problem basically started with an application of poultry or chicken manure upstream of where these melons were, and that washed downstream during the rain and kind of tainted those melons. So hopefully we get that fixed with some of the things we do. Future Farmers of America and Young Farmers of America, huge group. Future Farmers of America has 9,600 members in the state of Indiana. When I was in high school, I think there were 5 Future Farmers of America groups, FFA groups, the Blue Jacket Kids. I'm pretty sure we're down to 1 now, and that just goes with the territory of the way things have progressed in Clark County. As far as land use, farming's not the main industry, and we know that. Grain buyers and warehousing licensing group. Very important group. This group do just what it says. They license any place that buys grain, whether it be as large as Consolidated Grain just right down the road, or even be if I bought small amounts from local producers in my area and warehouse them for resale, I would have to be licensed by the Indiana State Department of Agriculture. And with that license brings a guarantee that, one, if I buy from you, you will receive your payment for your product. There's an indemnity program in place, which for every bushel of grain that I sell, 0.2% of the value of that load of grain goes to that program to ensure that I do receive my money for payment. They recently just closed a small mom and pop outfit, we'll call it, because they didn't have sufficient funds to cover the grain that they had purchased. So basically they liquidate the assets of that company, and then what debt is still owed is picked up by the Indemnity Corporation, which, like I said, comes from every time that I sell grain as a farmer, then they get 0.2% of what I sold. Livestock production. That's another one-man show that implements the Certified Livestock Program in the state of Indiana. That program is a voluntary program that basically emphasizes humane treatment of the animals on the farm, good stewardship of the land as far as what you do with the manure that the animals produce, where you put that, make sure it doesn't end up in the streams, creeks, ponds, or any water body. Like I said, it's a voluntary thing that goes as far as you even have let's call it an emergency plan. If for some reason you have a fire at your location, your buildings are mapped, whereas if I've got chemicals stored in building B, the fire department knows that they don't come and put water on building B, because if there's a fire there and they put water on, they're just washing the chemicals that are in that building, or may end up in the stream. So they know when they come to a fire in building B, they're going to use foam. They're not going to use water. There's places in plan, if there happens to be a terrorist act or certain things that we do with this program that has a plan in place where you just don't have a knee-jerk reaction that could actually be the wrong thing to do. I spoke about hardwoods before. Hardwoods, man, I wish I had some numbers for you, because I know you would be amazed, but the export of hardwoods from the state of Indiana to foreign markets is just wild. Mike Seidel would be a good speaker for you if you've got an interest in that thing, because he can talk for days about hardwood production and management and the marketing of it. He's very good at what he does. Lastly, but not leastly, is the Division of Soil Conservation, which is where the department I work in. We originated in the Department of Natural Resources, over 30 years ago. When Governor Daniels formed the Indiana State Department of Agriculture, or ISDA. We were transferred from the Department of Natural Resources to the Indiana State Department of Agriculture, which makes sense because without the soils, all of these other entities or divisions really don't have any place to start with. So we were brought into that under their roof. Our staff was cut. Luckily, I was told I was probably the next one to go, but I know better than that because the guy that supervised me was still there, if that makes sense. That's what I thought. Thanks, John. Anyway, our funding comes from cigarette tax, not tobacco tax, strictly cigarette tax, and a small portion of cigarette tax. We don't get any money from chewable or non-smokable type tobacco. We don't get any money from cigars. It's strictly cigarette tax. So with today's society and the downward trend towards smoking, which I don't have any bad feelings about, even though it cuts into my budget, I think it's a great thing. We do not promote you to smoke cigarettes, but we would gladly have you go buy them and just do whatever with them. Because right now, our budget is, within 2 years, our budget, based strictly on the cigarette tax, is going to get real close to zero. And with that, the legislature, seeing what kind of impact that we've had on natural resources in Indiana, had got with our bunch and a lot of other organizations, federal, state, and even local, and came up with a program called Clean Water Indiana, which they fund from the general budget of the state of Indiana. It's not our complete budget, but it's really enabled us to keep going and do what we're doing. The breakdown of the management, like I say, Lieutenant Governor is at the top. The Director of the Department of Agriculture is under her. The new director for our division, which was announced yesterday, and then under that, there's 26 resource specialists. I'm a resource specialist, but on top of that, I'm a resource specialist team leader, which doesn't mean anything when the payroll gets paid, but it means that I supervise field staff for 26 counties in the southeast part of Indiana. And lucky for me, there's no supervision involved. Most of those guys and gals all have a minimum experience is 12 years. 2 of those folks have been on longer than I have, so they've managed to get by without too much supervision, so I don't get in their way. They know what they're doing and they make my job easy. But being a resource specialist basically ties me to what we call the Indiana Conservation Partnership, made up of federal agencies, state agencies, and even local agencies. We work with the Natural Resource Conservation Service, which is a USDA. I use an acronym, but you know what USDA is. Through USDA, we work with the Indiana Department of Environmental Management. We work with the Department of Natural Resources, Division of Water, Division of Forestry. We work closely with Purdue University, the Extension Services, and the local Soil and Water Conservation District, which is probably one of the most vital parts of this partnership because that's your local contact. All 92 counties in Indiana have a Soil and Water Conservation District. Mr. Worley's well aware of what the Soil and Water Conservation District does for Clark County. I'm well aware of what they do for Clark County. Because basically, probably without them, I wouldn't be here because they have a lot of programs at the local level that keep me in something to do. I'll get into them, but right now, with that partnership, I mean, I work out of the office at Fairgrounds, at 4-H Fairgrounds. In that office, we have 2 federal agencies, the Farm Service Agency, which is the official record keeper for farm records. The Natural Resources Conservation Service, which is just that. The Natural Resources Conservation Service used to be the old Soil Conservation Service. We've got the local Soil and Water Conservation District employees in my office. Actually, I'm in theirs. There is presently a watershed technician for the Silver Creek Watershed Improvement Project. There's a vacancy for an urban conservation specialist that works with some of the local entities here in the county with urban work. Across the hall is Purdue Extension, and we're just all one big happy family most of the time. That it pretty much takes, we've got a unique situation in Clark County by having all of these entities in that one building. It's a one-stop shopping type thing. There's parking room. If you go to the Johnson or Hendricks County office, there's not much place to park a semi on the parking lot or park your stock trailer in the parking lot. A lot of places, if you go to the Franklin Field office, you can hardly park a smart car in their parking lot. So there's no way you can bring, and it's just, as a farmer and as a person that works with a farmer, that's one of the greatest assets that we have as far as that partnership. That, and it's right on the way for most producers going to consolidated grain. It makes doing business easy. Some of the things we do, wow, we wear a lot of hats, and the management doesn't mind giving us another hat, and we always seem like we take that in stride. But we work with so many different programs, federal programs, Conservation Reserve Program, CRP, is a cost share program solely to put grass waterways, and I'll explain what that is, and filter strips on cropland. Grass waterway is a place where concentrated flow comes out of a crop field, usually creates a gully. It may be waist deep, knee deep, and maybe you can jump across it, maybe you can't. That program, we use that program to install what we call grass waterways, which is basically we widen out the bottom, slow down the flow with vegetation, and basically walk the water off the field instead of the water running off the field. I've installed miles and miles and miles of those in several counties. It's probably one of the biggest conservation programs there is going. Another federal program, Environmental Quality Incentives Program, EQIP, basically starts with the same premise as a Conservation Reserve Program. You can install those two practices with EQIP, but it doesn't have to be on cropland. I can use that program to take care of the same problem in a crop, not a crop field, but a pasture field or a hay field. And there are a lot of other practices that go with the Environmental Quality Incentives Program too. We use that a lot for livestock operations. No, I don't mean confined livestock operations. I'm talking about just anyone that produces over $1,000 worth of agricultural products is eligible for any program that the federal government has. Some of the programs are competitive, some of them aren't. But EQIP, Environmental Quality Incentives Program, I'll use that program a lot to install fences to exclude livestock from streams, creeks, or ponds. When we do that, we'll try to provide an alternative source of water, which may come from that same stream or creek by us taking it from there and putting it into a watering facility by a pump. It may involve a spring development. I could even hook onto a rural supply. We even do that, as long as we don't have to travel. One program limits the distance I can travel with the water from a rural source to the water facility, just because of the parameters of the program, which takes us to another program. If I can't make it work for one, and not just me, the whole partnership, if I can't make it work for one, I'll find a program that does work. So those two federal programs we use a lot. State program, I referred to Clean Water Indiana a while ago. Clean Water Indiana is a locally ran program. The local soil water conservation districts receive these grants. It's competitive grants. They have to apply for them. If they're funded, most of those in this part of the country, or the state rather, are agronomic practices, which means it's going to have, an agronomic practice is going to have some kind of vegetation tack to it. We're either going to be seeding hay land or pasture land, taking a cornfield and turning it into a hay field, thus reducing the erosion and sediment that leaves the field, which carries nutrients off the field. We have been Clean Water Indiana is a huge promoter of cover crops. Cover crops